All right, people, it is 2025. Time for a fresh start. Time to stick to your resolutions for the new year. Who are we kidding? You know that's not going to happen. It's January the 4th, and you've already probably broken every single resolution that you made just a few short days ago, including not to drink in excess. So now, Saturday morning, the 4th, you got a hangover. Again, every Saturday morning. You swore, okay, I drank myself nearly to death on the 31st, of course, carrying over into the 1st. Then you said, okay, I'm drying out, got through the 1st, watched some football, stayed away from the booze. You got through the 2nd. Look at me, I'm drying out, I'm doing great. I am no longer a sinner, I am repentant. Then you got to the 3rd and you started to go, a beer sounds really good right now. And by the time you got to Friday night, you were out at the bar, bartender knows your name, and it all went downhill from there. The same old destructive patterns. Shot, beer back, hitting on women you had no chance with, and now you're here with your Uncle Kev, the Maestro Kevin Crane, on Saturday morning, January the 4th. And yes, it is your Saturday morning hangover cure. It is the weekend edition of Sports Frenzy 2.0. You can't kill Sports Frenzy. New year, same old politically incorrect pop culture commentary. Now, I am solo one last time. The Conquistador, your Uncle Dave Height, will be back with me next week for both the sports edition and the weekend edition. But I've got a lot of fun stuff lined up for us here. Taping here on January the 2nd. As I mentioned, this will hit on the 4th. Just in time for you to nurse your hangover. Don't forget, brew some coffee, take some aspirin, fry up the eggs, the bacon, the sausage. Sit down in your breakfast nook, or take a tray into your bedroom, in your mom and dad's house, wherever, whatever you might be doing. And let's have some fun for the next hour and a half. Starting off, of course, as always, with music. Now, this is a very, very slow time of the year. Once you hit November, all the big releases are out there. You're not getting new stuff the last half of November through December. So, we still have coming up in a couple weeks, our first new album of 2025 will be Tremonti. The end will show us how, but for now, I am piecing together things to get us through. Now, there's no worries when it comes to movies and books and TV and streaming, but with music, kind of got to be creative. So, what we're going to have for you this week is my review of the documentary released just a few months ago on HBO Max, showing you a little bit of a more mellow side of the Maestro. My daughter calls me a music snob, but I love all different types of music except for rap and hip hop. Ugh. Cannot stand it. Cannot stand the people that sing it, perform it, the hypocrisy, the nasty misogynistic lyrics. Can't stand it. Country music, fine. Classical music, fine. R&B, soul, fine. And you know what else is fine? A healthy dose of yacht rock. Yes, we just recently created this categorization for music from the mid to late 70s into the early 80s. It's a different level, supposedly sandwiched somewhere between classic rock and adult contemporary. In between there, you will find yacht rock. Now, HBO Max has this new documentary, relatively new. Like I said, I think it came out in the fall of 2024. They have a series of music documentaries labeled Music Box, and this is one of them. But this is called Yacht Rock, a doc, DOCK, documentary. Get it? Haha. Not very subtle, but just a couple minutes on this. We're not going to take up a ton of time here in music on this, but I'm always trying to juggle things. I don't want to spoil anything that Dave and I could review together, give you that back and forth, the arguments that you love. So I know this is one that he would let slide, let me do on my own. You've got a lot of important groups, important performers that this documentary covers from the late 70s into the early 80s. A lot of attention paid to Christopher Cross, Toto, Steely Dan, and of course the Doobie Brothers, with the man who is considered the godfather of yacht rock, and that is Michael McDonald. Those are the main acts that get most of the focus here in this documentary. Now, there are mentions of other performers and bands. I believe they mentioned Seals and Crofts and England Dan and John Ford Coley and Player, Ambrosia, I know for sure came up. But I liked this. This was fun. This was a nice little loving tribute to this recently, you want to say, discovered or made up category of rock and roll. I've always loved the music. I have always loved the music. I just didn't know until recently it had its own little niche. And you can go out on ultimateclassicrock.com. You can find the top 50 yacht rock songs of all time. They fully embrace it. And there are a ton of great songs on that list. Some I don't like, but most of them I agree with. Maybe would tweak the order as well, in addition to subbing out a few of the songs they picked. But what I'm getting at here is people are embracing this yacht rock label. We've got tribute bands out there. You guys have heard of Yachtly Crew and the Yacht Rock Review. And something I've brought up in the past is that why do we always hear that advertisers, once you turn 50, right, 18 to 49, those are the people that everybody focuses on when it comes to advertising and marketing, because once you hit 50, you are set in your ways and you're not changing your brand loyalty. Fair enough, but then why do we keep seeing advertisements with yacht rock songs or rock and roll songs for that fact in the advertisements? There is a car commercial that has been on for at least 6 months. Very, very prevalent during football games, sporting events, featuring Hart's Barracuda. Now, that's not yacht rock, but supposedly a song that was released in 1977? When I was 12 years old. And I'm almost 60. Okay? Supposedly, no. Nobody's going to sell anything to me because I'm a stodgy old man stuck in my ways. Then why are you doing Why are you showing Barracuda? Why are you playing Barracuda in a car commercial? I'm not going to buy a new car, right? I'm almost 60. So then why are you doing this? It's, you know why? It's because they're acknowledging that the music nowadays sucks. And the music from the 70s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s is still the best. And even the younger generations acknowledge this. They know this. And that's why the marketers and the advertisers still pander using the older songs, the older music. This is why now yacht rock has got this massive resurgence, this tidal wave of popularity. So as I said, I enjoyed this. I would give this documentary a solid 3 frenzies out of 4. I'm still trying to convince the conquistador to go see Toto, Men at Work, and Christopher Cross with me. I know. Some of you are going, well, then that's going to cause you to have to turn in your man card. I don't know if I'm going that far, because I've always wanted to see Toto. Men at Work, but Christopher Cross is the tricky one in that triple bill. You've got Ride Like the Wind is an awesome, awesome song. Okay? Although, once you see Christopher Cross and you read the lyrics for Ride Like the Wind, you go, wait a minute. This guy is singing what sounds like a badass biker tune? And then, of course, you've got the debates about Sailing. I personally like Sailing. Nice mellow song. But it's on the borderline. It is on the borderline. And then he goes way too far over the line into wussy territory with Arthur's theme. And then Steely Dan, a lot of people really on the fence whether that's yacht rock. A lot of critics who love Steely Dan offended by them getting thrust under this label. Very interesting part of the documentary is the discussion of the Steely Dan album Asia. And I know my mom loved that album. My mom was the one out of my parents who really instilled the love of music in me. My dad did about 90% of the rest of the work, but that part I got from my mother. And I know she loved the song Peg off of Asia, and she would dance around the living room, put it on the. We had a massive, massive, huge console stereo. I wish I still had it. Oh my God, it was phenomenal. But she would put on Peg and she would listen to that song and she would dance. But in this documentary, they talk about the technical aspects of the album Asia and talk about how it is technically one of the most perfectly well recorded albums, produced, engineered of all time. And so I have got to go back and listen to this album. I'm not a big Steely Dan fan. I do like them. But, you know, they're not in that top echelon of all-time greats for me. But I do want to go back and listen to Asia to see if I can pick up on some of these brilliant nuances that they talk about in this yacht rock documentary. But again, all that being said, either you're going to love yacht rock or you're not. And I get it. 75% of my rock and roll blood is headbanging, devil horns. You know, I am a child of the 80s. And by the way, next week on your Saturday morning hangover cure, the weekend edition, we will review the Paramount Plus documentary, Nothing But a Good Time, about the 80s hair metal scene. So we're going to shift from this week in yacht rock to next week, Rat and Motley Crue and Poison, all that phenomenal, awesome stuff. But of course, we're saving that for the Conquistador. Your Uncle Dave has got to get in on that. But for this week, since it's me, explore your softer, more mellow side when it comes to music. Check out Yacht Rock, a documentary on HBO Max. Again, 3 frenzies. I enjoyed it. Thought it was very, very cool. Brought back some great memories. And like I said, you learned something. I learned about Asia. Going to go back and delve into that album to again see if I can learn a little bit more about the recording process and what makes some of these people behind the scenes, what makes them go nutsy cuckoo gaga over the recording and engineering of a classic album. All right, let's move on to TV and streaming. Now, one of the shows that your Uncle Dave and I are watching right now, reviewing week by week, is Creature Commandos. Of course, that is the adult animated show, the first supposedly salvo in James Gunn's new DC universe. So now we are through episode 5. As you're listening to this, episode 6 has dropped. Looking at my calendar, that would mean that in 2 weeks, on the weekend edition, your Uncle Dave and I will review the entire 7-episode run of Creature Commandos on HBO Max. All I can tell you about episode 5 is that you do have the death of a major character. I will say that the novelty of the show is starting to wear off for me. I'm not a huge fan of the animation style. It's pretty generic, pretty bland. Gunn does a really good job in terms of trying to give us new characters, a different storyline. I will also throw out there that the Frankenstein monster, not the bride, but the Frankenstein monster, voiced by David Harbour, by far the most interesting character of the lot. We're still hoping, here with just a few episodes left, to get a little more backstory on Dr. Phosphorus, voiced by the great Alan Tudyk, but for now, we haven't got that yet. 2 more episodes left in season 1 of Creature Commandos on HBO Max. Now, as I mentioned, for music next week, we will review Nothing But a Good Time on Paramount Plus. Also on Paramount Plus, still working my way through season 2 of Tulsa King. Still working my way through the first season on Amazon Prime of Secret Level. Now, the animation on Secret Level is phenomenal compared to what you're getting from Creature Commandos. Short little, and I know I mentioned this last week, short little vignettes, 10 to 15 minute long stories revolving around different video games. So I'll knock that out here in the next week or 2, and we'll have a full review of that for you, as it's been renewed for season 2 on Prime. And then, of course, the big debut here recently, day after Christmas, as a matter of fact, Squid Game 2 on Netflix. Now, thankfully, I have not seen spoilers. I will not spoil anything for you kids. Probably looking at reviewing the full season 2 of Squid Game at the end of January. But right now I'm through the first couple episodes. I love the setup. The first episode and a half are tremendous. Great writing, great acting. Definitely makes a ton of sense based on what we saw at the end of the first season. I wasn't sure they should follow through and do anything more than one season. I'm still up in the air on that. But again, the setup, the premise, the first hour and a half or so, definitely has got me excited. But then, at the end of episode 2, then we get a little repetitive. And I'm sitting here going, we've been here, done this. What is this adding to anything? What is this doing to add to the story? After the great episode and a half you gave us to start off season 2, now we're just going to do the same thing we did in season 1? We'll see. We'll see. I'm still guardedly, cautiously optimistic about season 2 of Squid Game. But you got to do something different here at some point, guys. Well, like I said, we're going to take this a little more casually than a show that like a Reacher, where Dave and I would knock it out in 2 weeks easily and give you a full review. This one we're going to take our time on. So probably going to get a full review of season 2 at the end. Again, like I said, the end of January. All right, we've got a couple trailers to discuss on the TV and streaming side of things. One good, one bad. Coming soon, I believe within the next week. I want to say January the 9th on Netflix. I am a sucker for a great Western. I love a great Western. Distill the story down. Good versus evil. No phones, no technology. Truly tough people with leather skin, the stereotype, leather skin. But still, there's no way in holy hell you or I or anybody we know outside of maybe military people could survive in the 1800s. You can talk yourself into it and say, oh, I could. No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't, unless you were born into it. If you and I were dropped into it as we are right now, we would die within a couple days. American Primeval, starring who I think is one of the most underrated actors out there, Taylor Kitsch. Of course, Taylor Kitsch played Gambit. No, it wasn't Channing Tatum. It was Taylor Kitsch who played Gambit on screen in one of the Wolverine movies before Deadpool and Wolverine. Trailer looks good. Trailer looks really, really good. Looking forward to this. This is probably going to be a show we will end up reviewing over the next month or so here on Sports Frenzy, the weekend edition. But check out the trailer for American Primeval if you like a good Western, if you like Taylor Kitsch like I do. Again, he was in Savages. He was in the Chris Pratt Amazon Prime series. Oh, God. What was it? The Tomorrow War? The Forever War? I know those are the books in the series. Very underrated actor. And then the bad. American Primeval is the good. The bad is, of course, Disney Plus is once again going to figure out a way to fuck up a Marvel property. I have mentioned this many times over the past years on this podcast. My favorite animated shows of all time: Johnny Quest and the original 60s animated Spider-Man show. Yes, Spider-Man, Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Yes, that show was ungodly awesome. And it went through a couple seasons where it did completely different things. One season was straightforward, cheesy superhero goodness with all the classic Spider-Man villains, 2 short stories in every half an hour episode. God, I loved it. And then you had the psychedelic wild season. City in the Clouds and just weird, bizarre hippie music. And both of them, both seasons you take, or both formats, both versions, you take and you embrace them and you love them. Completely different, yet connected. Absolute brilliance. Well, now Disney Plus. Hot on the heels of their success with X-Men 97, which I do still have to watch. You get your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, where we go back to high school. We go back to revisit the early days of Peter Parker as Spider-Man. Hey, at least it's Peter Parker, and it's not Miles Morales. Sorry, I have a lot of problems with that. A lot of problems with that. I always have, and I always will. But that's what these comic book companies do now. They bend to the will of the PC nut jobs. So at least it's got Peter Parker. But the trailer for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, coming January 29th on Disney Plus, worries me. Now there is no traditional Spider-Man costume anywhere in sight. There's 2 different costumes that we see in this trailer. Now that in and of itself does not bother me. Couple other things bother me. Because again, you're going to go PC, it's Disney Plus, you know they're going to go PC. So of course, Harry Osborn, the head of Oscorp, of course, as we know, ends up being the Green Goblin. They have to make him African American. Great. Great, great, great. More, we're not racist, but we're racist bullshit. Like I said, at least we still have Peter Parker. I don't know about the other characters. You see a lot of social media involved because, yes, this is not taking Peter Parker back to his true origin years. Back in the 60s, this is now. It is set here and now. So you got social media and phone videos of Spider-Man, likes, thumbs up, thumbs down. Oh my God. Oh my God. Can't take that. But the worst part of the trailer is that, of course, they take my beloved Spider-Man theme song from the 60s animated show, and they, after 15 or 20 seconds, morph it into a rap song. Ah! How can you do this? Arguably, the greatest theme song from any animated show ever. Again, Johnny Quest might have something to say about that. But to blaspheme like this and turn it into an abysmal, shitty rap song, shame on you, Marvel. Shame on you, DC. Oh, DC, sorry. Disney. Shame on you, Disney. DC's got their own problems with being PC. But yeah, this is all about Marvel and Disney once again kowtowing to the woke crowd. And this has completely dampened any enthusiasm I had about this show. The animation looks solid. It looks like it could have been fun. But if this is the way, this is the road we're going to go down, you're not, I've already missed out. I used to be a diehard. I would watch every single Marvel movie and show. Ever since they started the expanded Marvel cinematic universe. I used to watch all of it. And then when the woke stuff, the PC stuff creeped in, is when I started to fade out. Especially when the Marvel TV shows, which were so brilliantly done on Netflix, went away and then they switched over to Disney Plus. I watched WandaVision, I watched Werewolf by Night, and that's it. I haven't watched any other series on Disney Plus when it comes to Marvel. And I gave up on DC. We'll bring DC back into it. I gave up on DC at the end of The Flash and halfway through Legends of Tomorrow because, again, they went woke and too far into the PC realm. And it just looks like they don't learn their lesson. They just don't learn their lesson. They're going to keep jamming this down our throats until we say, fine, 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 we'll accept it and we'll love it. And I'll never do that. I'm one of the fortunate people out there that has the full DVD set of the original Spider-Man animated series. I'll watch that any day of the week before I'll watch. Hopefully it'll be better than the preview and the trailer. But I would definitely right now say I will watch the original 60s animated show any day of the week and twice on Sunday instead of this PC garbage. So, we'll see down the road. We will see. Will I watch this? I'll let you know in February. I'll let you know in February once the show is debuted if I bother to check it out. I only watched half of one episode of X-Men 97. And I love the X-Men. And I loved the original animated show that's based on, going back to the 90s. That didn't even hold me. That didn't even keep me interested. And from what I can tell, that's not nearly as woke and PC as what this new Spider-Man series looks like. So, okay, rant over. Those are your trailers to look out for this week. All right, so I'm in this little superhero groove here. So let's move along from our trailers of the week to pop culture news of the week. And we've got a lot of DC movie news to discuss. Now, a lot of fans are crying foul out there on social media about this latest little tidbit of news when it comes to James Gunn's DC universe, his cinematic universe. And I understand it because I still think, looking back here earlier into the previous year, I got to get used to saying that 2024 is now the previous year. When Marvel announced that Robert Downey Jr. was going to play Doctor Doom, I had major issues with it. Now, down the road, when we get to Avengers Doomsday, if they somehow explain this away as an alternate universe Tony Stark being Doctor Doom, if they do it right, if they do it well, I'll buy into it. But if it's just Victor Von Doom and it's just Robert Downey Jr. getting another role in the Marvel Universe, I will be extremely pissed off because that's a cop-out. Find another actor. Now, technically, I could say the same thing about this bit of news from the DC Universe. Comic book fans have been waiting a long, long time for the movie debut of Lobo. Of course, created, I believe, by Keith Giffen. And they've got the right guy to play it. The only problem is he's already played a character, a major character in the DC Universe. If you have not heard, coming up in Supergirl, one of the newer movies that James Gunn will be putting out within the next few years in his new DC Universe, Supergirl will feature Jason Momoa playing Lobo. Now, that's perfect casting. I think Jason Momoa is going to be phenomenal as Lobo. But here's my problem. Beyond the fact that, from what I've read of this Supergirl movie, it sounds atrocious. It sounds absolutely atrocious. And I'm beginning to wonder, after watching the Superman trailer, I reviewed that for you last week, I don't know if James Gunn is really going to be able to fulfill all the excitement and the promises that all of us comic book geek fans have had ever since it was announced that he was going to take over in terms of shepherding the DC comic movies going forward. I am not impressed yet. I am not. But getting back to Jason Momoa, I am fine with him playing Lobo. I wish we could go back in time, however, because now he's another duplicate. As we all know, he played Aquaman. That's the problem. He never, ever, 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 ever should have been cast as Aquaman. He is not Aquaman. He does not look like Aquaman. So how do you handle this? They got it right the second time around. So we're supposed to go, okay, awesome guys, good job. And we just completely ignore the fact they fucked it up the first time? That Jason Momoa never should have been Aquaman to begin with? And I don't think I've heard any mention of Aquaman being included in any of this first run of movies for James Gunn's DC Universe. So again, love Jason Momoa as Lobo. Perfect fit. Can't erase the past. Don't like duplicating actors in the same comic book universe. Chris Evans might be the only one who gets a pass. Ryan Reynolds, different. DC, Marvel. Chris Evans, the only one who did it twice in the same imprint, whether it was DC or Marvel. Of course, he played the Human Torch, and he played Captain America, and Deadpool and Wolverine did a phenomenal job of playing off on that. But otherwise, I don't like it. I never have liked it. I never will like it. The other bit of awful, terrible news, which again casts doubt, to me at least, on what James Gunn is doing with his DC cinematic universe. Now, this is an offshoot. This is now something that is not part, technically, of what he's trying to do, because, of course, he's going to have his own version of Batman coming in The Brave and the Bold. But you still have Matt Reeves, who did a great job bringing Batman back with Robert Pattinson, and of course the tremendous performances from Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Of course, he got his own show on HBO Max because of how tremendous he was in his portrayal of the Penguin. You had great performances with the Riddler and Catwoman. An overall great reboot from Matt Reeves. I've said this in the past, and I will continue to say it. I usually say it more so with TV and streaming. I believe I went on a rant recently about Stranger Things. Well, the second Batman movie, featuring Robert Pattinson, which supposedly will immediately pick up after the end of the Penguin series that just concluded over the last, about a couple months ago, on HBO Max. That second Batman movie has now been pushed back a full year. And keep in mind, kids, we're just starting 2025. This Batman movie, the Batman 2, if you want to call it that, was slated to debut October the 2nd, 2026. Okay? Over a year and a half from right now. And they still can't get it done. So now it has been pushed back to October the 1st, 2027. Hollywood is a fucking mess. Okay? They're getting lucky with a lot of these kid-friendly properties. Whether it's Super Mario Brothers or Moana 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Mufasa. They are pushing the adult-oriented movies out of the marketplace. And I'm sorry, Wicked is not an adult-oriented movie. I don't know one guy who has both set of balls who wants to go see Wicked unless he's dragged there by his wife and daughters. The superhero genre is dying because of these delays and these stupid radical ideas. Kraven the Hunter, when it was first announced and when it first got close to wrapping, and it was another movie, got delayed and delayed, was supposed to make about $150 million domestically at the box office. Right now, it looks like it might, if it gets lucky, get 30 million. Wow. And Kraven the Hunter is one of the all-time great Spider-Man villains. Sony has caused their own problems with a lot of this. I didn't think Morbius was bad. Madam Web, I could have told you, was going to be a disaster. But Kraven the Hunter looks, Aaron Taylor Johnson, yes, another actor who's played multiple superhero roles, looks tremendous as Kraven the Hunter. Sony had such a wonderful wealth of villains, if that's what they were really going for, to keep the Spider-Man universe alive under their banner. They are the only sole company who still has Marvel character rights outside of Disney. They're trying to keep that alive because they have to have projects in development constantly. At least that was the old agreement. They had to have a Spider-Man movie of some sort in development constantly in order to keep the rights to the entire Spider-Man universe. Now they've made a deal where, of course, Spider-Man now can appear in the Disney Marvel universe, beneficial for both sides. But Sony has done themselves dirty. They could have done a movie focusing on the Scorpion, right? Come on, Scorpion is awesome. Electro, the real Electro, not Jamie Foxx as Electro. You get the Rhino appearing in Kraven the Hunter. Again, looks a lot better than that Paul Giamatti robot thing. There are so many great Batman and Spider-Man, the two greatest when it comes to the assortment of phenomenal villains. Superman never had a great villain. Maybe up until Doomsday. And they still really, in my opinion, haven't gotten that right. Captain America had the Red Skull. Outside of that, eh. But these companies still are not, they're not listening to their fans, number one. They're just they're going too far into the whole we know what we're doing. We won't listen to outside noise. We'll make these movies the way we want. And Sony's botched it. I think James Gunn is already on the verge of botching this. And the fact that they have delayed this Batman movie again to late 2027 is going to destroy interest. And who knows what the landscape is going to look like by then. Who knows how the new Superman movie will go over here in 2025. Who knows on the Marvel side how things are going to go over with Thunderbolts and with Captain America. I'm not overly impressed with what I'm seeing from Captain America. I'm really not. The Red Hulk kind of looks stupid to me. And I have always been a huge Captain America and the Falcon guy. But now Captain America is the Falcon, but we're bringing in another Falcon who's what, green? I don't get it. Now, I have not read comic books in over 2 decades, but there's a reason for that. We're not done yet with my comic book rants, by the way. Give me another minute or two and we'll return. So those of you who hate comic book movies, sorry. That's what a lot of this TV and streaming and movie segments, that's what they're going to be about. But a couple other little news tidbits before we move on to my featured movie review of the week. Right now, as you're listening to this, on January the 4th, 2025, on Spotify, Good Pods, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. And of course, don't forget to check out the Facebook page. As you're listening to this on January the 4th, if you have an Apple-friendly device, not an Apple device, any device, Fire Stick, Roku that has Apple TV Plus as an app, you can still watch now, through this weekend, a free Apple TV Plus weekend. Remember those? When I was growing up, I remember free HBO weekend, free Showtime weekend, free Cinemax weekend. Remember those? Back in the 80s and the 90s? Well, Apple's bringing it back. This weekend, again, right now, as this episode has dropped, free Apple TV Plus weekend. And they've got some good stuff out there. I can't pay another $10 subscription right now. But when I had it for free back in 2024, for 3 months, I watched a lot of Monarch, of course, revolving around the Godzilla Monsterverse. Very good. Sugar with Colin Farrell was very good, and my subscription ended right when it was about to take a very interesting, possibly bizarre twist. So I might have to hop on this weekend just to see what happened in Sugar. Plus Bad Monkey. Oh my God. I don't have enough time in 3 days to probably watch Bad Monkey, but I've been dying to watch Bad Monkey, of course, based on the book by Carl Hiaasen, starring the man, the myth, the legend, Vince Vaughn. So get out there. There's other stuff, tons of other cool stuff out there on Apple TV Plus to watch. So go for it, free this weekend only. And then Paramount Plus. I think Paramount Plus, I don't think they'll make it through 2025. That's my prediction. I just don't see how they're going to make it through 2025. One of the weaker streaming services out there. Now, to me, HBO Max is the weakest. If you go on HBO Max, it's all reality TV and documentaries and low-budget garbage. At least Paramount Plus has got some really good original shows, most of them, of course, done by Taylor Sheridan. But still, you got Joe Pickett, you got Tulsa King, you got Landman, plus the Paramount theatrical movies hit Paramount Plus first. But this is a bad sign. Here, at the end of 2024, Paramount Plus removed a massive amount of shows, Nickelodeon titles in particular, from their online streaming library. That is never a good sign. You expect people to pay more for less. And yes, I know that's the way the world is right now. I look in the grocery store and I look at a family size container of Oreos. or Chips Ahoy. And I go, that used to be the normal size. Yet now they want to charge $4, $4.50 for it and call it family size. And meanwhile, the regular size is half of what it used to be at the same price. Same thing goes with TV and streaming. Specifically, I will call both out again. Paramount Plus, HBO Max. They are cutting content and charging more. That tells me they're both getting ready to merge, maybe together or with other streaming companies. Netflix will survive. Amazon Prime will survive. The Rat will survive. So Disney Plus and Hulu will stick around. But I really wonder how much longer we're going to have HBO Max and Paramount Plus, especially with this recent news that Paramount Plus is dumping a ton of their Nickelodeon content off of their streaming platform. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to circle back around. Yes, more comic book stuff. A release here in movies, my movie review of the week, that did not get a lot of fanfare, barely made it into theaters. I don't even know if it did. And if it did, it was a very, very limited, maybe 1 week release. Startup company that had a big release that flopped miserably. I believe this was back in 2023 with Ben Affleck. Hypnotic. I remember seeing that on Peacock. Not bad, but still terrible, terrible box office. And now Ketchup Entertainment, that's the name of the company, has released the latest offering in the Hellboy saga. Now, I love the character. I love Hellboy. I will admit, full disclosure, I have watched both of the Ron Perlman Hellboy movies, Hellboy and the Golden Army. Have not watched the David Harbour Hellboy yet. But now we get Hellboy, the Crooked Man, from, again, this startup, which is not doing very well, Ketchup Entertainment. However, I will champion this movie and champion what Ketchup Entertainment did with it. Obviously, they don't have all the backing, all the capital behind them that a Paramount or a Warner Brothers Discovery or a Disney have. So it's obvious they could not pump an absolute ton of money into this latest Hellboy movie. However, I think for what they had to work with, they did a phenomenal, phenomenal job. Hellboy, the Crooked Man, takes place in 1959, out in the backwoods of Appalachia. Appalachia, however you want to say it, potato, potato. As Hellboy and members of his team are transporting a creature via rail car back to their headquarters. Is it BPRD? However, they never mention the BPRD in the movie, unlike the other Hellboy movies. Well, especially, again, the Ron Perlman ones. Something goes wrong. Train derails, or at least their car, which I found very odd at the beginning. No spoilers, this happens in the first 5 minutes. but their car derails and smashes through the woods. I think the rest of the train just kept on going as it was intact. Again, willing suspension of disbelief, one of the core tenets of watching movies. So Hellboy and his teammate lose their precious cargo, this creature. Hellboy senses they are in a bad, bad place. They are in an evil spot. Something is wrong. Potentially, that's what caused their car to derail and stick them here in the middle of nowhere. So they start wandering around and they meet up with the locals. And we hear about legends of witches and the legend of the crooked man, who's basically the devil. I don't want to get into the weeds in the story, don't want to spoil it. There's not a lot of story here. I will say that's the one really weak part of the movie, is there's not a lot going on. It's basically Hellboy and his friends versus the crooked man and all of his demonic sidekicks in a showdown of good versus evil. But again, as I mentioned, I love the character of Hellboy. Jack Kesey takes over as Hellboy in The Crooked Man, and he does a ridiculously good job. I loved him as Hellboy. Now, the script is awesome as well, in that he gets some ridiculously cool one-liners. But the look, the makeup people, again, kudos to them, on a limited budget. I'm stressing there's a limited budget here because of the fact it's set in the woods. There's only 3 or 4 buildings involved, and that's it. And then the train at the beginning, that's it. For, no glamorous, huge sets. So what they've got to work with is, on a limited budget, they do a phenomenal job with the makeup on Jack Kesey. He does a great job delivering his lines. You feel the empathy for him as he's stuck between devil and man. I thought it was vastly underrated. I went on IMDb, which I will do sometimes, not for validation. If I'm going to like a movie, I'm going to like it. If I'm not, I'm not. But I will go on sometimes to see if people agree with me on certain points. If I saw something odd, I will go on to see if somebody else caught it. So I'm not like thinking I'm going crazy. The terrible rating this movie has got on IMDb it's pathetic. It's pathetic. I don't know what you people were expecting. This is a really, really good movie. A really good movie. I give it a solid 3 frenzies. I almost went 3.5. The only reason I didn't go higher than a very solid 3 is because, again, there's not a lot to go on when it comes to a story. It's all about the visuals, the acting, the characters, the battle of good versus evil. In many ways, it almost plays out like a Western. Which, of course, I talked about earlier, referencing American Primeval. If you're into comic book movies, specifically the Hellboy movies, Mike Mignola, of course, the creator of Hellboy, he helped to write the script here. Director Brian Taylor gets a lot of credit, in my opinion, for doing an unbelievable job with this. And again, shame on anybody on IMDb who gave this a bad review. You're the same pinheads who gave Penguin stellar reviews. And the Penguin was a vastly, vastly underwhelming miniseries. Yet you hate Hellboy the Crooked Man? I would watch Hellboy the Crooked Man any day over rewatching The Penguin. Check out Hellboy the Crooked Man. Now, I bought the Blu-ray. I don't know where or if it's on streaming right now. I'm sure you can buy a digital copy. Ketchup Entertainment, their last movie, that Hypnotic with Ben Affleck, I know popped up on Peacock. So maybe The Crooked Man will show up soon on Peacock if they have some kind of a deal. But look for it, watch it. It is cool as hell. Now, one last little pop culture tidbit, and then we move on into Moments of Silence and our nominees for the Red Foreman Dumbasses of the Week in Pop Culture. Now, recently we told you about a story where Australia had banned social media for anybody under 16. Well, now it's crept into America. And even though I am a huge free speech advocate, I'm all for this. We don't need cyberbullying. We don't need our kids looking at all this negative garbage. Sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. It has to be done. Florida has now banned kids from under the age of 14. Ban them from social media. Now, I don't know how you enforce this. I know they're gonna have a screen pop up and say, enter your birth date. And it's really hard to lie about that, right? But I admire the fact that Florida is trying. All the liberal fucktards out there in California and New York always look down on Texas and Florida and say they're backwards ass. I look at it the other way. I think Texas and Florida know what the hell they're doing. And meanwhile, California residents kiss Gavin Newsom's ass, and they're paying what, 50% effective tax rate? Almost the same in New York. In New York, you can't walk down the streets without a 30% chance of dying now. People getting pushed onto subway tracks, random gunmen. I don't want to hear about how awful Florida is. I used to live in Florida. Florida's awesome. Part of me still wishes I lived down there. Except for the snakes and the gators and the hurricanes. Not the Miami Hurricanes. They're awesome. But this is a step in the right direction. These kids don't need social media in their lives that young. How many stories, tragic stories, have we heard about suicide, teen suicide, because of cyberbullying, because of people posting memes and Photoshop pictures of kids, forcing them into despair and depression? We don't want that for our children. That's why this is a good thing. We're not banning free speech. To me, this is like yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. It's destructive and it costs lives, young lives. Kudos to Florida. Now we move on to Moments of Silence. Of course, we'll start off with the loss of the former president, Jimmy Carter. Now, here's the thing. I am obviously not a member of media. I don't want to be a member of the legacy media. They're liars. They're hypocrites. And even when it comes to somebody like Jimmy Carter, their true colors shine through. They seem to forget what happened in 1980. Now, I will say this about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was probably the greatest ex-president by far. By far. In my lifetime, and from what I've read and heard, possibly ever. The man had a heart of gold. Habitat for Humanity has helped so many people. I have no problem saying this man was a great man. This man was the greatest ex-president ever. But he sucked as a president. And that's the part the media doesn't want to remind you about. The high gas prices, the long lines at the gas stations, the hostages in Iran. They won't mention the hostages in Iran because that would taint Jimmy Carter's legacy. Every person, there's good and there's bad. We can't ignore the bad and just focus on the good. And there was a lot of good. Again, after he got out of office. But they look back in retrospect and vilify Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was the guy who cleaned up a lot of the messes that Jimmy Carter left behind because Jimmy Carter was not a leader. Great human being. Great human beings sometimes are too soft to be true leaders. And that was the case with Jimmy Carter. Ronald Reagan came in, scared the crap out of Iran to the point where they let the hostages go. After months and months of negotiations with Jimmy Carter, where nothing got done, Ronald Reagan came in, got elected, and they said, oh shit, here you go, have your people back. So let's not sugarcoat everything Jimmy Carter did. But again, I will acknowledge him and remember him as the greatest ex-president ever. Controversial movie from 1968, Romeo and Juliet. There was recently a lawsuit filed because of the nudity involving underage actors and actresses. And that involved Olivia Hussey. Olivia Hussey played Juliet. Unfortunately, she passed away here recently. Olivia Hussey Isley. Thoughts and prayers out to her family and friends. One of the great sitcoms to come out of the late 70s into the 80s, I do believe. Alice. The star of Alice, Linda Lavin, passed away. Thoughts and prayers. Great actress. Then finally we mentioned this man on the sports edition a few days ago, and I mentioned he's going to be appearing on both for contributions to both sports and pop culture. Charles Dolan. Now here for our wants and needs on the weekend edition, he is the man who gave us HBO and Cablevision. Now, of course, his son has taken over his sports enterprises controlling interest of the Knicks and the Rangers in New York. So, of course, thoughts and prayers to all of the people we've just mentioned here in moments of silence. Now, of course, it's time to pivot. Dave will be back next week to give you his much better impression of Ross Geller from Friends as we yell pivot from sadness and sorrow to idiocy and stupidity. The Red Foreman dumbasses of the week. Now, your Uncle Dave always chastises me and says I go too far. 6, 7, 8 nominees, that's too many, Kev. You got to stop doing this. You're too angry. You got to dial it down. Well, I'm not dialing it down. Maybe I'm refining my searches a little bit. So I've been much more reasonable here over the past month or so. But he's right. If I get pissed off and I see a lot of examples of stupid, arrogant, nonsensical, moronic behavior, then I might go back to having 7 or 8 nominees a week. But for right now, for you and I, my dear listeners, 3 nominees this week for the Pop Culture Weekend Edition Red Foreman Dumbass of the Week. Now, you are going to have to help me out. What you're going to have to do is get on Spotify or get on the Facebook page and you tell me who you think out of these 3 is the true dumbass of the week. We will start off with an actor who I don't even know. This man's name is James Norton. Now, James Norton, he starred in a show, which I've never heard of, called Happy Valley. I've heard of Harper Valley PTA. I've never heard of Happy Valley. But supposedly, this guy is being considered to take over as the next James Bond. What is up with James Bond lately? Got Daniel Craig acting all weird, ripping into the character of James Bond. Meanwhile, he's portraying gay guys after gay guy after gay guy. I don't get it. When did James Bond become such a hated, reviled character? Oh, that's right. When the PC idiots took over. The woke crowd. Because a man can't be a man. A man's got to be a wuss. That's not how we play it here on Sports Frenzy. Toxic masculinity, kiss my ass. And I could go on for hours about that bullshit and turn it right back around on women and the alphabet mafia and Black Lives Matter, all of them. But we'll save that for another time. But James Norton, again, supposedly a possible frontrunner for the next James Bond. Get this. You're going to love this. This just makes me want to punch this guy in the face. James Norton says men should atone for, quote, patriarchal crimes of the past, unquote. Let me repeat. Men should atone for, quote, patriarchal crimes of the past. And of course, if you didn't know this by now, the patriarchy is one of those phrases that woke people love to use. Basically insinuating men, particularly white men, old white men, have gotten their way for way too long and they need to be brought down. And we've had all these decades and all of these eras where we've made advancements in civil rights and women's rights. And it's never enough. It's never, ever enough. The hatred, the vitriol will never stop. And like I said, that doesn't fly here on Sports Frenzy. We're old school. We believe in equality for all. Stop beating men down. Stop it. And that's why I hope this will backfire on Mr. James Norton. And he has now basically, by saying this, disqualified himself from being James Bond because he's a pussy. He's a little namby-pamby woke pussy. And he does not deserve to even get close to sniffing the role of 007. And he is our first nominee for the Red Foreman Dumbass of the Week. But we're not done with going woke yet, of course. And you can say it's low-hanging fruit. Of course it is. I prefer to call it low-hanging stupidity. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. These are the companies that are behind and own the classic game Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I've mentioned I geek out on comic book stuff. I never got into D&D. I didn't. Doesn't mean if that's your thing, cool. I'm not one of those guys that's going, oh, look at these geeks playing D&D. No. That's not who I am. If that's your thing, go for it. I am cool with it. You want to be a mage or a gnome or a barbarian, whatever the characters are. I get it. Games are cool. Whatever floats your boat. Unless your game involves a ball gag. Maybe you've gone over the line there. But nothing wrong with D&D. Nothing at all. But now Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have gone too far, as they've basically laid out new rules for D&D. They've basically taken race out of the game, and now race means species. Because, of course, you can't talk about race because it's racist. Okay. But yet, we're still asked about our race, although it's voluntary, on applications for employment, taxes, anything important in life. But it doesn't matter. But does it? But that's not even the worst part of this. More changes involve the fact that you should clarify what the rules are before you start your game or your campaign, whatever they call it, to make sure everybody's comfortable with what you're going to do. And if, while you're playing the game, somebody gets, yes, love this word so much, note sarcasm, somebody gets triggered, you must bring the game to an immediate halt to address the concerns of said player. Oh my holy mother of fucking God. Can we stop with this stuff? I will say it again. What is going on with the current generation? And even the generation before? You people need to be wrapped in bubble wrap. Maybe suffocated. Oh, did I say that out loud? Stop it! Men, grow a pair. Women, grow a pair. Toughen up. you don't want to participate, walk away. Don't force your views and your morals on other people. That's the problem with what's going on in pop culture right now, is we're letting the few dictate the rules to the many. Here's an idea. Let the few walk away and find their quote unquote safe space somewhere else instead of destroying it for everybody else. Hey, but that's just me. Then finally, somebody Dave and I have already got booked on the plane of doom. If you don't know what the plane of doom is, a little bit of a fantasy thing that Dave and I have, where if we could pull from the sports world and the pop culture world, and even, of course, politics, enough people to fill a plane, strap them in, put them up in the air, and then drop it in the middle of the ocean. That's what the plane of doom is, to get rid of the worst of the worst of the dumbasses. Because all they do is suck all the fun and life and sense out of the world for the rest of us. And somebody who is on the plane of doom, whenever we get the money and we get to say so from the FAA, Kathy Griffin. What an evil, vile human being she is. She wonders why she got in trouble for posting pictures of her holding a bloody, severed head of Donald Trump. What's wrong with that? Isn't that funny? Yeah, try doing that with Kamala Harris or Joe Biden and see what happens. But it's Donald Trump. I am embarrassed and ashamed that she appeared in one of the episodes on my favorite show of all time, Seinfeld. By the way, one of the worst Seinfeld episodes ever. Not just because of her, it was badly written. But she's not funny. She's an obnoxious, evil twit. And of course, promoting her upcoming tour of stand-up, quote-unquote, comedy. I think she was in Chicago, actually on a station I grew up with, WLS. Obviously not the same as it was when I was growing up with Larry Lujak and John Records Landecker, even allowing this idiot on the airwaves. But of course, she's got to promote her tour because I'm sure there will be plenty of seats available day of show. She's got to jump on the Rachel Maddow idiocy paranoid bandwagon. And again, when does it get to the point where we can sue people for lying, for spreading false information? Remember that narrative that goes back to the COVID year of 2020? Spreading false information. Kathy Griffin says, and this is a direct quote from her interview, her promotional stop on WLS in Chicago. Quote, "Come see me," she's talking about at her show, "before I'm in one of those internment camps." Rachel Maddow and Kathy Griffin need to be, no, not thrown in internment camps, but need to be taken to court and sued for libel and lying in the mass media. That's not a free speech issue. Again, lying, yelling fire in a crowded theater is not a free speech issue. There are restrictions. to what you can say. You cannot say things to hurt other people. I thought this was obvious to all of us by now. Yet somehow the morons in Hollywood and on CNN and CNBC, ABC News, CBS News, all of them seem to be able to get away with this. Not here. Not on the weekend edition. So your 3 nominees for the Red Forum and Dumbass of the Week: James Norton, Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, and Kathy Griffin. For me, it's got to be Kathy Griffin. Everything that comes out of her mouth is despicable and disgusting and vile. The woke stuff with D&D, you could see coming a mile away. James Norton basically shot himself in the foot. Will never be James Bond now. Kathy Griffin is pure, unadulterated evil. Coffee or tea on the plane of doom, Miss Griffin? Maybe arsenic instead? A little dose of cyanide before your plane takes off, ma'am? I cannot tell you how much I despise this woman. She is my Red Forum and Dumbass of the Week. But who do you choose? Let me know on Spotify or on our Facebook page. And that is going to do it for the weekend edition of Sports Frenzy 2.0. Next week, the Conquistador is back. We will review Nothing But a Good Time, the 3-part documentary series on Paramount Plus revolving around 80s hair metal. We'll have movie reviews. We'll have TV stuff. I know for a fact, by the way, your Uncle Dave will have reviews of Day of the Jackal, the first season on Peacock. And he will also have a review going way, way back, because he loved True Detective Season 4 with Jodie Foster. He let me sway him into going back and starting to watch the first 3 seasons. He will have his review of the very first season of True Detective featuring Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. Very curious to hear his take on that. We'll also have new songs from David Lee Roth and the Black Moods. You don't want to miss the weekend edition. Next week, the triumphant return of the Conquistador. But until then, enjoy the beginning of 2025. Be safe. Weather's probably going to start getting really bad here as winter settles in for a lot of us. Don't let it get you down. Listen to some great music. Watch some great shows. Check out some great classic movies. We'll do this again in 7 days when you are hungover yet again. And you know you will be. If you like sports, check out our sports edition dropping every Thursday morning. But until then, however you want to consume Sports Frenzy, we are here for you. We will check you out next week, kids. Take care.